Hello, everybody. It's Friday, and that means it's time for another topic of the week. That's right. Who's excited? I'm excited. First off, let's get started with some logistics as usual. Thank you to everybody who contributed and commented on last week's video, which was about tournaments. As always, I will have that linked below. And so if you want to see what everybody thought about tournaments and the fun they had at tournaments and so on and so forth, you can click that, and you'll have all the links there to go to everybody's contribution to that. This week, this week I had talked to Nick from Long Island Wargaming. He put out a video earlier in the week of the top 10 things that people hated about 8th edition, and he kind of asked for some people to respond to that, and I thought, hey, that sounds like a great topic of the week. And so I asked him if he minded if I did this. He said, no, go ahead. So there we go. I know Gomo already put out a list. Gomo's Itchy Nuisance. I thought his list was great. And so this week we'll kind of have a look back. We did the things we loved about 8th edition. We did that a couple weeks back. So hey, let's get the other side of the coin. Now that we're where we are, whether you're moving on to an 8.5, whether we're 9, you're looking at an update, whether you're moving on to AOS, seems like a great topic to me. Let's do the top 10, that many, things you hated or didn't like or bugged you or whatever about 8th edition. This is all in good fun. We're talking, and obviously part of this is so Nick, he's looking for everybody to share this, and he's kind of trying to see what ideas rise to the top, right? That's kind of the idea of the thing. So theoretically out of this, we get a nice list, and then, he can see, hey, look, this one thing was in everybody's top 3. Maybe it really is a problem. As he mentions in his video, he's not looking to make huge changes, but he thinks that we as a community are smart and fun and engaged and can probably come to, some improvement of the system. And I agree with him completely. And even though I personally might love AOS and want to be playing that all the time, I certainly don't begrudge anybody who wants to play 8th or 8th with a new rule set, 8.5, 9th, whatever, and think that that as a community effort is totally awesome and want to support that. So, that's the challenge, folks. It's an easy one. What are your top 10 things you hated, complained about, wish would be fixed, whatever, about 8th edition? So I will go ahead and do mine as well. I'll write them down below so that you can actually read them, because I don't have like a neat little PowerPoint presentation prepared like Gomo did. You should go check out Gomo's video. I'll actually link both his and Nick's original video down here as well. That way, just links everywhere. Why not? So, my top 10. Here we go. In no real particular order. These are just 10 things that bothered me. So, number 10, the size of 8th edition armies. I hated how many troops or figs you had on the table at 2,000, 2,500 points. I know people at the end of the edition were going away from infantry and having these big blocks because they tended to get chewed up by things like monstrous infantry. But I think that's half that and half who wants to paint 50, 60, 100 figs anyways. I think a lot of people don't like it. I don't mind that being an option to do that. I just think at every army having that, the size of them, they were such a massive investment to get an army, to start a new army, to start the game. Oh boy. And that's if you just want to have one way to play. Most of us like being able to field lots of different armies, so that means you've got to do way more than just your 2,000 or 2,500 points, right? To actually be able to field kind of anything. You end up with like 7,000, 8,000 points with all these massive forces. I mean, look at all this escaping. You can't see it, but over there's a shelf of probably 12,000 points of Tomb Kings. So, yeah, just the general size of it was a barrier to new players starting, and even as somebody who paints at the speed I do, it's a daunting task. And I don't begrudge, like when I saw people with some gray or half painted or maybe like just tabletop quality miniatures painted, I didn't begrudge them that at all. I completely understand. Man, it is, like there's a difference between hobbying and work, and sometimes these armies would drift into work. Number 9, mount choices for characters. So this might sound like a weird one. I don't know if I've heard anybody mention this, but this is always something that got right in my craw. I hated when there were things in the army that people could be mounted on, but your characters couldn't take them. Or characters had really weird mount selections. One of my favorite things, it's funny because it's clear, like in the first one, in number 10, I like 5th edition size armies more. And back in like 4th, 5th edition, there was just a selection of mounts you could put any characters on, like Manticores and Chimeras and Dragons and stuff, and I always loved that. I think a lot of my complaints might come from the fact of when I started this game, like back in 4th, 5th time period. Anyway, it always bothered me when monsters existed and you couldn't put characters on them. I don't care how good of a or bad of a choice it was. I love people on mounts. I think heroes on mounts is just cool. It's neat. It's a centerpiece model. It's fun to paint. It's fun to convert. So things like, so here's an easy example. Demigryphs out of the Empire, or Necro Knights out of the Tomb Kings. So Monstrous Cav did this all the time. Not with Warriors of Chaos or whatever, because they could still get Juggernauts, or at least Khorne people could get Juggernauts. But I always, I want to be able to put my character on lots of different mounts. I wanted to see more cool, crazy mounted options. Whether that's a generic table like 5th edition, or whether it's just if something exists in your army, the general can be like, hey, idiot, get off that demigryph, give it to me. I'm the general, I'm important, you're a nobody. You go walk with the halberdiers, enough of this garbage. Or get a horse or something. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. So there you go. Number 8. Fast Cavalry. I don't like Fast Cavalry in 8th edition. It's too good and mobile and silly. The way they can just, like, move and change and snake, and they're behind you, and they're all around. Like, I get it. I understand how Fast Cavalry works historically. But I'm pretty sure they weren't just riding within, millimeters of the enemy troops to snake around behind them and become untouchable and unkillable, and nobody could ever do anything to them. Fast Cav is really powerful in this edition. Now, when that's just like some dudes with bows, that's generally okay. But when it became things like Brolocks and maybe Dark Riders or other potent examples of Fast Cav, then it really got just obscene, because then you were combining really potent abilities with the ability to never be caught. So maybe if we had just stuck to like Ilarian Reavers, we'd all be fine. Number 7, Fear and Terror being useless. Fear and Terror were always like the advantage of armies like Undead and Demons, that even your lowliest zombie causes fear. But fear is so irrelevant. Like, it is a weird day when someone fails a fear save. It's because you happen to attack somebody outside the bubble, and they happen to have a low leadership, and like, oh my god, they actually failed. Whoa, what a weird thing. Look at that, your weapon skill 1. I mean, and it wasn't even that big a thing to fail. Yeah, you hit on 5s as opposed to probably the 4s you were going to hit on before. It's not great. I'm not saying it's nothing. It's just underwhelming. A rare thing that is underwhelming in effect, that's not good. All right, number 6, single model chaff. I think Nick mentioned this, and maybe even Gomo mentioned this, but like single model chaff, when you walk out just this one tiny thing, and it turns aside an entire frenzied block of 40 murderous lunatics. Something about that doesn't feel right. Like, I get it, and it's a necessary point in the game, but come on. Does that really feel right to you? That feels wrong to me. And I'm not trying to make like a realism argument, although that's certainly there. I'm just saying it feels like not fun, like not why we're playing the game. It feels so very rulesy, right? And so if you watch my previous video, it's a 100% gamist move. It's exploiting the rules of the system to achieve advantage, which is fine. I have no issue with it. I did it all the time. Okay, I'm not saying like I'm better than that, or that we should all be better than that, or some nonsense garbage like that. I'm saying that it just feels weird, right? Like, you look at it, and on a lot of smell tests, you're like, does that one Warlock Engineer really turn aside that block of 50 Bestigor? I don't know. That feels weird to me. Save stacking. Ugh. So, you know what's fun? Murdering things. Making models die. It's pretty sweet, right? Like, killing stuff. It's pretty cool. You know what's not cool? Not doing that. So just the ability of some, like, saves and defensive stuff are by their very nature less fun, right? Because, like, it's when you're slaughtering things, when people are slaughtering things equally, and a bunch of things are dying, go back and listen to battle reports. This is a thing. Watch all the battle reporters. And most of them, when they say, man, it was a bloody game and a lot of things died, but I just eked out a victory. That's fun, right? The general consensus is at the end of that game, they had fun. Now go back and watch a game where nothing died. Not fun, right? I mean, I think that's my argument borne out there. Nobody likes to have their stuff killed, but at the same time, if we're both killing each other's stuff, if it's a bloody fight, it feels like a fight, and it feels fun. When defenses get too high, when ward saves get too high, when you can be 1-up, 1-up, 3-up, reroll ones, or whatever the case, that's when it starts to get like, no, we're not having fun anymore. We're just literally like pushing our toys against each other and nothing happens, right? That's no good. So, and by the way, also, it's funny because Materium did a show a little while back where we talked about magic items that are really popular. And if you look at the default magic items that everybody takes, they are defensively oriented. Things like the Tally of Prez, or things that make your unit more defensive. Crown of Command, Standard of Discipline, those make your unit more defensive. Not in the traditional sense, but breaking and exploding and dying is, defending against that is the best defense. So, anyway, we're all purposely taking things to make the game less fun because that's just human psychology. All right, number 4. People, this is sort of a thing, this isn't really a fault of the game, but it's something that happened. People not using like mystical terrain and stuff like that, and fearing terrain in general. Terrain makes things fun, and mystical terrain is awesome. I used it all the time, but I watched a lot of battle reports, and most people didn't use it. And that's a shame, because I think it's a lot of fun. And, I just read, so the writer of Mordheim, whose name I do not remember, and I apologize, but the designer of the game, he wrote a great article about it very recently, 15 years later, looking back on Mordheim. And one of the things he pointed out was that the strength of Mordheim was in the randomness. That he sought as much randomness as possible because it naturally balances the game. Because the more things are random, the harder it is to plan. And what he basically said is like the less random, the more reliable everything becomes, sort of the closer you get to chess, where things are very predictable, the more that sort of like a very gamist, tournament-oriented, whatever you want to say, player can predict the exact sorts of things that happen and execute the same sort of strategy every time, or rely on certain truisms happening. Fine, if that's the way you like to play, I guess. But to me, a lot of the balance concerns and things like that get thrown out the window when you can't predict anything. Yeah, things are more powerful, but sometimes things die and things go wrong and there are changes and this shows up and this happens and this, blah, 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 blah. And mystical terrain really facilitated that by making units suddenly frenzied, or sorcerer's portals throwing spells out, or whatever. So I think people should play with mystical terrain more. So if you're keeping into 8th, or you're doing Age of Sigmar, both of which have that, use that terrain, folks. It's a lot of fun, and it makes the game different and unpredictable. And most importantly, memorable. Rote is not memorable, right? The more you're just executing the same strategy, it is not memorable. Random things where just suddenly brilliance happens, that's memorable. All right. Number 3, building rules. Yep. I think I can stop there. Number 2, the bubble. Oh boy, the bubble. So essential in 8th edition, right? And that led to like your bunker unit with your general and your VSB or whatever, just bubbling this out, and your army's in this little bubble and it shuffles around, and it's so important. And by the way, I'm not bagging on that playstyle. It was so important, and I hate that. I hate how important it was, because it made you play in this like really goofy, unfun style. I hate the bubble. Like, it was a necessity. We all used it. We all should have used it. That was the right choice. Just didn't it suck? See everything I said about single unit chaff. And number 1, the MIscast table. I don't have any problem with the cataclysmic results of the MIscast table. I actually rather love cataclysmic results. My only problem with it was, and I don't mind it randomly happening. So like I love MIscast, and I don't have a problem with it being happening sometimes on 2 dice. My only complaint with it was I always felt like, and somebody suggested this who wasn't me, back on Warhammer YouTubers a long time ago. So whoever you were who suggested it, wonderful idea. Was that it should have been scaled. Like, instead of just being kind of at the odds end, it should have looked more like the Steam Tank table, where you have like a d6 plus the number of dice you used, and the results were scaled so that the weaker things were at the bottom, and the suck down a hole things were up top. You should be able to get sucked down a hole. And by the way, that should even have a chance to happen on like 4 dice. So if I were rewriting the table, it'd be like a d6 plus the dice you used, and like 10 through 12 would be the dimensional cascade. So there's like the weaker spells, you're never, if you just do 2, 3 dice, you're never summoning enough magic to actually go down the hole. But once you get over to 4, it could happen. It just becomes like a scaled thing where like, when you really rip in and start pulling that warp out, oh boy, is it getting dangerous. So, that's my top 10. Now you notice some things that are on my list that might be on a lot of others, so just some quick honorable mentions. My not-ons, my not problems. Bomb spells and not allowing saves. No issue. Loved them. Yes, they were great. That's right. I stand behind Dwellers and Pit and D13 and all that stuff, and I have eaten them in the face more than I'd like to mention. That sounded weird. Because they stopped the other thing that's not on my list, Death Stars, right? And big stuff like that. It made those propositions dangerous. So no, I thought they were really nice rock scissors to each other, or rock whatever. You know what I mean? They're good counters. And death spells were fun. They're big. They're crazy. If they go off, hey, neat. That's awesome. Like, the game is about losing models, folks. Like, that's, again, if you don't lose models, if you're not killing the enemy, you don't have a fun game. Fun games are the ones where things die. It's a hard pill to swallow, but the most fun games you've had, I bet, if you look back, they're not going to be the ones where you lost nothing and tabled your opponent. You're not going to remember that. In fact, it's probably hard, like, those are boring games. It's not going to be the games where you both lost nothing. Nope. That's a 10-10. That's boring as all get out. Yay, we met in the middle, we fought for 6 rounds, nothing happened. Awesome. And bomb spells made that stuff happen. They made models go away, and models need to go away sometimes. And as I stated, I'm not a big fan of hyper-defensiveness. And bomb spells cut around that, so thumbs up to them. Death Stars, obviously, bad, boo. Boo hiss, Death Stars. But they were okay. I didn't see them that much because bomb spells kept them in check. Made them very dangerous to run. And cannons. A lot of people hate cannons. One of my regular opponents, I love big monsters. I play them all the time. One of my regular opponents is an Empire player who never hits the table with less than 4 cannons, usually 2 of them being on Steam Tanks. So I feel like I know a thing or two about cannons. I don't care. I field monsters against him all the time. Sometimes my stuff gets shot off turn 1. That happens. It's alright. Sometimes it doesn't, and I get into him and slaughter him, which is also fun. So, you know, I mean, they are one of the advantages of that army. I don't really have a problem with them. I would say if there was going to be one minor change, it's just when you trace them across a rider on a mount, I would like it to maybe only hit one of them instead of both. And then I'd probably be fine with them. Yeah, that's what I think. Games about models dying. Sometimes it happens. It's okay. Life goes on. So, there's my top 10 things about 8th edition, plus some honorable mentions. What are yours? Make your videos. Make sure you share them with Nick. So, as usual, I will put all of them here. Make sure you share them with Nick so he can see and make a list. And as always, thanks a lot. See you next time.